Hi, everyone. Hi. And this is another episode of Most Haunted Places. Tonight we are traveling to New Orleans, Louisiana, where we will be exploring the LaLaurie Mansion. Make sure you stick around until the end of the video, because we have a special treat for you. In 1834, Dr. Louis Bartholomew de McCarty moved into a mansion on Royal Street in New Orleans. Louis had been born in New Orleans in 1799 to a wealthy family who were prominent members of society. He had studied medicine and had married Delphine LaLaurie, who was the daughter of one of the wealthiest men in the city. They had purchased the home from her father and set about making some changes to it. Louis had hired architect Isaiah Robertson to design an addition to the back of the house, which would be connected to the main part of the property by a courtyard. This new section would contain his medical office as well as a small pharmacy. It seems that he wanted to incorporate his work into their home. There had already been a house on the site, but it had burned down in 1826. The new house that they were building was said to be much larger than the original. It would be constructed out of brick and would boast elegant courtyards, wrought iron balconies, and would have a mansard roof. Along with all of these amazing features, there would also be a labyrinth of tunnels beneath the house. These were used to supply fresh air to the pharmacy, but more importantly, they allowed the doctor to move freely between his office and the street without having to go outside. The couple lived in the house with their children and slaves. Accounts of how many slaves they owned vary, but it has been estimated that they had somewhere between 5 and 100. They treated their slaves horribly, often beating them if they did not work quickly enough or to the standard that they wanted. There was also a dungeon located underneath the house where they chained up the slaves when they were unworking. On April 10, 1834, a fire broke out in the kitchen of the house. Firefighters arrived, but it was too late. The whole house was engulfed in flames. People stood by and watched as the entire structure burned to the ground. Fortunately, everyone inside the house managed to escape. However, people were shocked at the sight that greeted them the next morning. When the fire had started, the slaves inside the house had panicked and had barricaded themselves inside the dungeon. When firefighters arrived, they tried to get inside the dungeon, but the heavy iron door would not budge. They were forced to cut through the bars just to get inside. Once they had finally gotten access to the room, they found 8 bodies. 7 of the victims had been female and 1 was male. Their bodies were covered in rope burns, showing how they had tried to escape only to be pulled back inside by their chains. News of the incident spread like wildfire through the city. People began to protest, demanding that the remaining slaves be freed. However, Mrs. Delphine LaLaurie had other plans. She claimed that she believed the fire had been started by one of the slaves, and that they had murdered the other slaves before barricading themselves inside the room. She had convinced the governor that she had been no more than a victim herself, and that she had done nothing wrong. She was able to keep the remaining slaves under her control and continued living in New Orleans, but the townspeople were not fooled by her lies. They had long known of her cruel treatment of the slaves and refused to let her live there. She was forced to flee, and she and her daughter moved to France, where they lived the rest of their lives. Over the years, many stories have come out about the mansion on Royal Street. Some say that those whose names were taken off the plaque outside the house had actually been the architects and builders, and others claim that it was all made up so that the truth could be hidden. We may never know what really happened in that house on Royal Street, but there are still plenty of reasons to believe that it is haunted. It was long after the horrific events that took place there that people reported seeing ghosts roaming the grounds. Many have seen the ghost of a woman in a nightgown walking through the streets, or sitting on the balcony. Some believe that this is the ghost of Delphine, while others believe that she haunts the house where she was held captive. Others have said that they have heard the sound of screams echoing through the halls. or the sound of shackles dragging metal moans of a tortured soul? In 1972, author and paranormal investigator John Gaddis investigated the house. He interviewed several locals who had seen strange things happen inside the mansion. One man had said that he had seen the ghost of a woman dragging herself closer and closer to him before disappearing. Another man had said that he had heard whispers coming from inside the vacant house. Then there was the story of a tour guide who had gone inside the house and had been taking visitors around. Suddenly, her flashlight flickered and died. When she tried to turn it back on, it wouldn't work. Moments later, she felt something cold brush against her leg, and she screamed and ran away. Her guests said that the temperature in the room seemed to drop suddenly, and that they had felt a presence watching them. There is even footage of the alleged ghost of Madame Delphine LaLaurie on camera. In 1992, paranormal investigators were using an infrared camera to see if they could pick up anything unusual. As they were filming, they saw what looked like a woman in a nightgown standing at the top of the stairs. But when they turned the camera to focus on her, she vanished. That same year, a local news station decided to hold a contest to see who could spend the longest inside the house. The winner was a young woman named Kim, who stayed inside the house for 13 hours before leaving of her own free will. She said that during that time, she had experienced unexplainable things. At first, she said that she had heard footsteps following her through the house, but as the hours passed, the footsteps grew louder and more aggressive. She said that she could feel someone walking right behind her, and that she had turned around several times to see what was there, but there was nothing there. After hearing these footsteps for several hours, she said that she had begun to feel a presence with her. It wasn't malevolent, but it was definitely there. She said that she had felt the presence trying to communicate with her, but she wasn't sure what it wanted. Kim wasn't the only person who had won a contest like this. 2 weeks earlier, a man named Brandon had stayed in the house overnight, and he had also heard footsteps pacing back and forth on the floor above his head. Today, the house is known simply as the LaLaurie Mansion. It is now a bed and breakfast run by the family of John Gaddis. If you decide to stay there, you will be staying in the very same room that he spent the night in. Many people wonder why the ghosts haven't moved on after all this time. Perhaps they are waiting for justice to be served, or maybe they are trying to warn us that evil like this can exist in our world. If you enjoyed this video, then check out the playlist for more Most Haunted Places. And do you forget to hit that subscribe button to join me on my journey to find the most haunted places in the world?